So, what's beyond the Bachman-Howard ordinal? Like we talked all about this a while ago.
Okay.
Why did you say that?
I just said K. That's just an agreement. My input doesn't matter. This is your video.
So, psi1 of 0. We're going to make a psi1 function. A new psi function. Psi1 of 0 is going to be equal to epsilon sub omega plus 1. Because you can imagine taking like C1 of 0, and it's going to be the set of every to capital omega. Like epsilon to capital, and also the capital omega 2 stuff. So the first inaccessible point is epsilon omega plus 1. Then psi1 of 1 is equal to epsilon omega plus 2. Psi1 of A is equal to epsilon omega plus 1 plus. And then we can continue. Psi1 of omega 2, we're using the omega 2 place will be zeta sub omega plus 1. Omega 2 times A will be zeta sub omega plus 1 plus A. Squared will be eta.
Keep in mind, you also have a whiteboard and markers if you want to display what you're talking about.
Plus 1, psi1 of 0. I'm writing this down. I'm psi1 of A to epsilon omega plus 1 plus A. Psi1 of omega 2. Psi1 of omega 2 times A. Omega 2 squared is eta. Omega 2 to the A will be phi A plus 1 omega plus 1. And psi1 of omega 2 to the omega 2 will be gamma sub omega plus 1. You see how this is going?
Yep.
And we're going to reach a point where this gets stuck, and that will be psi1 of epsilon omega 2 plus 1. And then we're going to define a psi2 function, where psi2 is epsilon omega 2 plus 1. Psi2 of omega 3 will be zeta omega 2 plus 1. Psi2 omega epsilon omega 3 plus 1. And then we can go and do things like, but here we're going to have a problem. When we have psi of capital omega sub 7, we need to write in all the psi functions up to the psi 6 before we can even put in the omega 7. You see my point?
Mm-hmm.
Like so I'm gonna say that if you have like this, anything from psi1 to psi 6, whatever, is gonna be implied. So like, for example, if you have psi of psi1 of psi 5 of psi 8 of omega 9, this just turns into psi of capital omega sub 9.
Okay.
Oh, I bite it. I'm sorry.
What did you do?
Sorry. I bite it.
You bit it?
Yes.
You put it in your mouth?
No, it was just that this marker bit it. So we
Okay,
can have
that's
capital omega sub little omega inside psi, capital omega sub capital omega. Now here the psi function gets more complex because before, well, listen, when we have psi of omega 2, what if we have epsilon sub that plus 1? Here it acts weirdly because that will be psi of psi 1 of omega 2 plus 1, and that's less than psi of omega 2 plus 1. That will be psi of epsilon sub psi 1 of omega 2 plus 1. see my point?
Mm-hmm.
Then we can go. What happens when we reach psi of capital Omega sub capital Omega?
I have no idea.
Here it gets more complicated because before you can get to omega, like omega sub omega plus 1 even, you have to have psi sub psi of psi sub all these pre-ordinals and nest this. Oh, and it just keeps going, right?
Mm-hmm.
We can have omega omega 2, omega omega omega, and in fact there is no end to the psi function as a whole.
Okay.
Shall we end here?
Do you want to end here?
Well, yes.
Okay.